Yeah. I mean, I guess if no one else has a topic, maybe routines and like the power of them or how to establish one.
One that we were kind of talking about
Yeah.
a little bit.
And then also, I took this workshop on last Saturday, and it was from this like spiritual like teacher that I've been following since the big like pretty much beginning of my journey. Claire's the one that showed me. We both love her, and it was a relationship workshop for relationship manifestation, but in a way that you work on yourself and work on yourself so that you can cultivate that type of like cultivate the best relationships around you. And so one thing that like really stood out to me during the workshop was like she said that there are 5 relationship questions that you should ask, and this can be for like a partner or your family member or like a friendship. So it can be for anything. Like it doesn't just have to be like romantic. So the 5 questions are, why do you choose to be in a relationship? So like, why do you desire to be in that specific relationship? And then what do you need to give and like to the other person, like what you need, like for example, like I love like giving massages and stuff, so I need to do that, or I need to do some form of like healing or something like that to my partner. And so like that's something that's a must, or what do you need to receive? Obviously that's like an important one. Why that person out of everyone? Like why is that the person that you prefer out of everyone else to be an important relationship in your life? And then my favorite one is, what does your union do for the world? Because if it all, Karis, the teacher, she's saying that if you're just confused about any like type of relationship and you can't think of any of the other questions, like answers to any of the other questions, just bring it down to what does your union do to the world? And I think that will like just like explain itself when you ask that question about your relationships around you. So yeah, just sharing that. But yep.
Those are really great.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's really good to think about that in any relationship, whether that be your friendship or your family or a partner, or maybe even your relationship to yourself.
Yeah, no, those would be great questions to ask yourself too. Yeah, and they're definitely like you have to sit and think about them for sure. It's not something that you can just.
Yeah. I think it's good to ask those kinds of questions or other questions that you may have heard elsewhere when you're reflecting about yourself or your partners, or even what you were asking, Angel, about like routines. And, there's a lot of self-help people that talk about finding your why, and that if you have a strong enough why, you'll persevere through any how. And if you can manage to find out your why in regards to any aspect of your life, your routines, relationships, work, dreams, whatever, it can help fuel you to stick to a routine, to implement that discipline, to implement that daily ritual to achieve your end, to achieve your goal, whether that be, again, in a relationship or career, hobby, anything really. And I think that's as good a place as any to start when trying to establish that discipline and that routine, because ultimately, if it's a weight loss goal or health goal, if you don't have that goal or that end point or that barometer for what you're doing, you don't have necessarily a strong enough desire always to follow through. And the reason that most people don't, and this is myself included, of course, is that we are afraid of failure. We are afraid to fail. We're afraid to set the standard for what decides failure. In other words, if you've set a why and you've set a goal and you've set a target and you don't meet that target or you don't follow through, even in your mind's eye right now, you don't necessarily want to set a target because you ultimately don't want to fail or scared to fail. And if you can manage to power through that, or I wouldn't even say power through that, I would say it's more, you're going to have a greater capacity for success if you can humble yourself to set the lowest goal possible that you feel is achievable. In that everybody's at a different point, and you shouldn't be comparing yourself to anything or anybody other than who you were yesterday. And sometimes you can go through, you know, depression or anxiety spells or whatever it may be that is keeping you from moving forward, that is keeping you from setting the routine, setting the goal, setting the standard for yourself. And sometimes it's enough to say, I'm going to pick up the clothes off the floor. And sometimes it's enough to say, I'm going to take the trash out today. I'm going to clear one counter. Sometimes it's enough to say, I'm going to look at, if you avoid the mail, I'm going to look at one piece of mail today. I'm going to tackle one, you know, stupid thing that I need to do. Like, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of like, insurance comes to mind because of you, Leandra. Just like, you know, I'm gonna check insurance rates. It's like not fun necessarily. It's not, you know, something that you really are dying to do, and it's something that is just nagging you though at the back of your mind. There's those things that are nagging you, and all those little things seem like nothing. And this is even, I'm just thinking about, you know, my own life and my own things that I don't do and that I put on the back burner. And it's like those little things all add up to this weight that's holding you down. And it seems like nothing. It seems like nothing. There's no reason to pick up this one piece of clothing on the floor because it's just one piece of clothing. And what happens is that turns into 2 and 3 and 4, and then it's basically a whole laundry hamper that's covered your whole floor. Or in my car is a mess right now. And it's a mess, especially in the passenger seat floor, because I pretty consistently throw receipts there, or I throw straw wrappers over there, or mail that I know is junk mail, and then I just don't pick it up, right? And so it seems like nothing. It seems like nothing, the one piece. It seems like nothing, the one piece. And then when it becomes a big pile, it seems insurmountable in a certain regard. And it's not that it's not insurmountable, it's just there. And it's like, well, now it's so much, why bother? Just keep adding to the pile. Just keep adding to the pile. And so when you manage to find ways to tackle those little bitty things that seem trivial, you end up finding a huge bandwidth of capability within yourself, because you're no longer bogged down by those things that are nagging at the back of your head. They're like little weights that have been, you know, attached to you. And I think I used this analogy before, where it's almost like if you've ever gone like walking through some woods or a forest that's like really thick brush, and it's like at first you were completely clean, you know, your shoes were clean, your pants were clean, and by the end of it you're just covered in these sticker burrs. You got like, you know, leaves and all kinds of stuff attached to you, and it's just kind of that compiling of all that stuff that gets attached. And in a certain regard, if those things were weighted, you would feel much more weighted than you were before. So to take it back to finding your why, and again, humbling yourself to setting something up that is simple enough, low enough, that you can't argue yourself out of. And that's, I think, the really big key on that regard, because we all, I say we all, maybe you guys don't, I know I do, tend to think about things from the perspective of this big thing that needs to be completed, this final task that needs to be done versus the smaller ones. And when you think about that final task or that end result or that end expectation, it can feel like, why bother getting started because I don't have such and such to complete it, or I don't see the results right away, or whatever excuse it is that you give yourself. And I would say try and start with 3 things that you can't argue out of, that will be your discipline actions for your next week. Set a goal for a week. If you can't manage a week, set a goal for the next day. And try to write it down at the end of your day or when you feel like you have some clear space. And I would also say try and post it up on the wall. It forces you to see and contend with your thoughts, see and contend with your aims and your goals that you've set for yourself when you're in the right state of mind. Because it's not when you're in the right state of mind that those things seem like things you shouldn't bother doing. It's the next day when you're tired from work, when you're tired from the stress or the drama of your relationships or your, whether they be family, friends, coworkers, whatever, that it feels like, why bother taking the trash out? That's when it really, and those are the times that it really counts for you to follow through on your standard that you set for yourself. And the other thing about that is that when you repeat that action, you're rewiring your brain to have a more positive association to the goals that you're setting and to the way that you manage and tackle those goals. So now the brain, instead of thinking about taking out the trash or doing the dishes, is thinking about it as this insurmountable task, and it's this thing that I have to do, and it's this, like I don't feel like doing it because now the food's caked on the plate and because I've been letting it sit for so long. Now it's you've slightly changed your association to your task to be one of a positive result. It's, you know what, I didn't feel like doing it and I did it anyways. And because of that, now I walk in the kitchen and it's like, oh, it's lighter. Maybe it's subtle, but it doesn't feel like this weight. It doesn't feel like this thing nagging at you. It's like, oh, I picked up my clothes and I walk in my room and it feels nice. It feels better. Sometimes you don't even know why. And I always use the house chores one because it's something we can all relate to, and you just need to apply it to whatever things it is that you're wanting to work on. If that's chores, that's a really easy place to start. And it's again a place that everybody can tackle a task and start that process of rewiring your brain. So now when it comes to something that you need to do but you don't want to do, and you write down that you're going to tackle your taxes, that you're going to tackle your schoolwork, that you're going to do, whatever things that it is that you're needing to do, hopefully you'll have built your kind of your resistance to those negative attributes or those negative associations to your tasks to being one of more positive, because you have so many wins under your belt, and other thing to keep in mind is that you're going to fall off, and that's okay. You're going to fall off. You're going to miss the mark. You're going to feel the failure. But that doesn't mean that you are a failure. That doesn't mean that you failed forever, unless you choose to fail forever. It means that you missed the mark today, or you missed the mark this morning when you set that goal. You still have the chance to make up for it. you still have an opportunity to regain your footing. You always have an opportunity to regain your footing. And it's ultimately up to you and your choice, which is why we come back to the meditation. And that meditation is a choice. You have to choose to do it. You have to choose to sit and do nothing, essentially. It's the easiest thing to do. There's no real task. There's no real goal per se. If it's sitting in silence or sitting and listening to music, even if it's that you set the goal for sitting for 5 minutes, you're sitting and making a choice to do something that you intended to do. And that's one layer of why incorporating a meditation practice into your routine is so powerful, is that you're wiring your brain to have this association to you making and sticking to a choice. A choice so simple that, again, it's just sit for 5 minutes and pay attention to your breath. You probably don't want to do it all the time. I know I don't necessarily want to do it all the time. But if you can do that, you're getting that snowball rolling. You're getting your compounding ball of your self-discipline rolling so that the other tasks can come easier, because everything is a choice. Everything comes down to choice. You're going to choose to do the dishes or not. You're going to choose to do your taxes or you're not. All of these things have varying levels of consequence. All of these things have varying levels of weight on your consciousness as well, when they're done or when they're not done. And when they're done, ultimately, again, you have greater amounts of consciousness to tackle the bigger tasks. Any thoughts?
I have a thought. Last week, I was talking about how I was thinking about self-compassion a lot. And then later in the week, I was with a friend and she told me about this woman named Shauna Shapiro. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a psychologist and she practices mindfulness. And my friend asked me, she was like, do you know how meditation teaches you compassion and it makes you more compassionate? And I was like, no, I haven't really thought about it too much. You know, I just know that I am more compassionate through meditating. And I guess this woman was talking about how when you meditate, you know, your thoughts will drift and then you bring yourself back, you know, you bring yourself back and, you know, you are patient with yourself. Sometimes I'm not super patient. I'm like, why can't I just focus? But it's those times where you are patient and you bring yourself back to the breath over and over again. You're showing yourself compassion. And then, so then in your real life, you're able to show others compassion through showing yourself so much compassion. So I think what you're talking about like choosing one thing to do every day, just like doing your best, even if it feels small, it's better than just being overwhelmed by the big picture. It's just like focusing on the little things. I think that's a really awesome way to show compassion to yourself.
Yeah. That's what we were just talking about.
Like literally the same words out of your mouth.
Nice.
Crazy.
Yeah. But I think that that's awesome because I get overwhelmed with the big picture a lot. And you were talking about once you find your why, like what stops you. And I do think that it's being afraid to fail, but I also think it's afraid of not being able to be in control. I think that that stops us from doing a lot of things because a lot of times when we try new things, you know, we're not in control because we haven't done it before or we don't know how it's going to turn out. So we just decide not to do it because it's just too overwhelming. So that's what came to mind whenever you were talking about how being afraid to fail stops you. I also think the thought of not being in control really scares us.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, what do you do about that? You know, it's, you can only have control over what?
Yeah, you have to surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can only control you and your thoughts and how you choose to act or react to something. And everything else is, it's not up to you to control. Hopefully you can direct, you can guide, you can set a goal, and you can set your intention, and you can set up kind of some parameters for how you want it to be. But if you hold too strongly to an expected outcome, you oftentimes will find yourself stagnating because you are missing what you think you need to complete, or what you think you need to be able to control it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm currently, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that's exactly what we were talking about when I first came over here, just in regards to art.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so basically, I used to not think that I was an artist at all. So like I just would choose not to paint, choose not to draw, and I would say all the time like I'm not creative, I'm not artistic. Like I would say that all the time, and like up until like probably literally up until I moved back to Houston like a year ago. Like I thought that, and then like being around like my sisters like Claire and like all my friends and stuff, like they were constantly doing art and like they just did it, and I would like look over while I was sketching and they were sketching, I'd be like, oh my god, like mine like looks like literally just a bunch of scribbles, like what is up with me, and I'm like, well, whatever, like, and I look over and I look at their faces next, and like they're happy and they're content and they're just doing their thing, like they're not stressed about it, and I'm like, why am I being stressed about it? So then I just started focusing less on the fact that I'm not good at it or I can't do it, and just doing it because I felt like it, and like looking at it and being like, okay, it's not looking like exactly how I want to do it, but let me just keep going and just see how it is. So just kind of like adding on and on to like a painting. Like, let me show y'all this avocado as an example. Okay, so when I was painting this avocado, I was like, oh my god, it's not gonna be good. I don't know how to shade, like I don't know. But then I just kept doing it, and I'm like, okay, and I just kept doing it, and eventually it turned into this like cute little avocado, and I was amazed at myself at the end of it. Like I was literally like, how did I do this? But then there are other times where I'll be sketching and it doesn't turn out the best, or like painting and it doesn't turn out the best, but then I look at it and I actually finished it, and I'm like, okay, well I did it, and it's not the best, but like at least I did it and I completed it, and I'm feeding my creative minds. And like from that TED Talk, Alex Gray's TED Talk that you sent Claire, like he was saying creativity feeds creativity. So like that's just like what has clicked in my mind ever since like a year ago, or like just being in Houston again and being around creative people, just like doing it out of like love, and just like because you want to keep going it, and just like making sure that you don't just quit, because then it's just going to be a pile of unfinished things, and then it's just going to have a negative connotation to like it, and then you're just going to eventually probably just give up on it completely. Hopefully not, but that's an example of that thing. Yeah, of the question.
Can I add something? There's what my problem is whenever I'm trying to accomplish something or create something and it's time to share it, I always have like these critics in my head. Like I can maybe a teacher from the past, they've said something and I know I'm not doing it to their level that they wanted. And I'm like, you know what? It's okay. It's like, if I were to not, I know it's kind of cliche thing to say, is like, if I were to die like today, or I would regret not doing it. If I couldn't do that ever, I would regret it. So why not just do it now? You'll learn, and things will get better gradually. There's a one poem or speech called "The Man in the Arena." I don't know if y'all heard of that by Theodore Roosevelt. I don't know if it was from him or not, but online it says it is. But I used that for a while whenever I was having trouble with critics, because I'm a performer. I play music, and it was pretty scary for a while. But now with, you know, with a little bit of that, it kind of helps. It's a good poem. You guys should check it out. I'll post it in the group chat.
And I'll just add to that too, that, you know, a lot of times, this is what I was talking about in regards to art specifically, and same with music and probably most anything, is that there's we're our own worst critics, and we're usually fretting over like the misshaped line or the note that was slightly off, or, you know, whatever little thing, because we're so invested in the piece, or we're so invested in the music that we notice it. But most people aren't going to notice. Most people don't notice the little mistake that you see. Most people, you know, they just don't know. And so you might as well just do it and see what happens, you know? And more often than not, it's going to be just fine. What were you going to say, Angel, earlier?
Oh, I was gonna say, I think what I've been struggling with the most is like finding a why. But Adelie actually said a good point when she was talking about the art. Like, you do things out of love, right? And I think that's a pretty good why. But I've kind of been in this weird, I don't know. Um, I don't know. It's kind of weird because like I feel like I've been more on a spiritual track lately, but that's made me more like detached. And I'm like, well, everything is kind of vapor. Like, well, what is worth investing my time and energy in? And so, because I haven't found that, um, it's been hard to have like those motivations to do like little things. And I guess I don't know. I'm just looking for something to fall in love with again, because I mean, I've been in grad school for a little bit and I'm kind of burned out of that. And I don't know, I guess it's a very human thing to just um you get tired of things, right? Like, and you want something new or whatever. But
For sure.
I guess what I'm trying to cultivate is like being not content. I don't know, because content feels like a settling, but you know, being just in love with like the mundane, or the things that are um expected, or like, I guess things that are not necessarily flashy new. You know what I'm getting at. It's been hard to like kind of cultivate that in myself, and because of that, I don't know, I haven't really found a good why, or to help me do the little things, and to even get me motivated to be like, okay, I'll establish a routine, and that way I can do this or whatever.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Well, I just wanted to ask you, Angel, are you still working on that? From the last time that you came to my class, you were talking about some physics lesson that you were going to teach us about, like something. I've been trying to remember
Yeah.
what physics is like.
Yeah, no, it's so just like an intro to quantum mechanics. I haven't put a lot of work into it yet, and honestly, I don't know. I probably should, because that's what keeps me passionate about it, right? Like, academia tends to be very isolated, and
All
like
want it.
we just, huh?
We all want
I
it.
know, we're waiting.
All waiting.
Yeah. And I think part of that is like what Brianna was talking about, the critics. I'm like, I don't think I really have trouble with like other people criticizing me, but I'm very tough on myself. So I think what Claire said is pretty resonant with me, about like, you know, just having that self-compassion and being like, okay, well, you know, you're doing your best, but that's hard for me.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, just so you know, you're not alone. Okay, like you're definitely not alone in that regard of not being able to find a why, or
Yeah.
not feeling like you're doing your best, or not feeling like, what's the point, in a sense. We all go through that. I'm in that too, you know. I will say, as far as like, if I had waited till I felt good enough to start doing these group classes, I would have never started. And there's like, I have some video of me from, teaching like 5 years ago or whatever. And like, I don't even like watching it because I feel it's like, oh, it's so cringy. Like, oh, I don't even want to see how I'm talking or whatever. And like, using my notes but I had to start. I felt called that I had to start it. Right. And if I had worried about the critics, and again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier, even about art, is that everybody was oh, Leandra was there. I was like, who was there? Leandra was there back in those early days. And they didn't really care. I mean, they didn't care about how bad it was or how I sounded or if I was right or wrong. They were pretty receptive. And again, I'm sure I messed up. I'm sure I said the wrong thing. I'm sure whatever. But ultimately, I had made a choice to start, and that was enough to get going. Ultimately, you have a will to live. You have a desire to fulfill yourself, even if you don't know exactly what that means, even if you don't know or understand where it may take you. If you can, again, like Claire said, cultivate that compassion for your future self, that you understand that you're not just living for today, that you are a cohabiter of this body, of yourself today, tomorrow, the following day, next week, next year. All of those are different selves. They're different versions of you. And in a certain regard, you're not just living for, again, you today. You're actually making choices for multiple people. And again, ultimately, in your heart that you want to be able to do the best that you can do when whatever speaks to that love or that thing that you're passionate about kind of finds its way to you. And if you can trust that it will come your way, and you can find the faith in the fact that there are going to be things favorably coming your way, or things finding their way to you, and have that faith and act as if it is coming your way, act as if it will be in your grasp in the future, and use that as your fuel to help propel you in the today, in the current day, whatever day that is, that you are setting yourself up to be in the best possible position to receive that blessing, the best possible capacity of yourself as an individual to act on that blessing, and in the best possible environment and knowledge and capabilities, because you've taken smaller steps that seemed insignificant, that seemed like they didn't contribute to, your ultimate goal or your ultimate why. Even if you don't know what that is, then eventually you have to understand that it will find its way to you, and it will manifest to you when you kind of least expect it. And that you've set the stage for yourself to be in the right moment, in the right time, in the right capacity to maximize on that opportunity. So even if you don't know a why, your why is that opportunity is coming your way. That can be a why. It's hard
It
to find.
requires a lot of faith and
It does
just,
require a lot of faith, but ultimately, the faith is that you're going to live, right? You're going to live tomorrow. You're going, assuming, nothing bad happens or whatever. You're going to live tomorrow. You're going to live next week. You're going to live next year. You're going to live 10 years from now, so to speak. And you know that there's things that you want to do. And so it is in your best interest to act as if you want to be able to do and receive those opportunities when they come. And yeah, there's a bit of faith there in a certain regard. But I think no matter what, you're still going to be in the best capacity to live your life by acting in your own best interest today. You're essentially servicing yourself for tomorrow, whatever that means, because you're going to live. And you don't always know what tomorrow is going to bring. None of us do. We all, and I think a lot of that also comes from comparison of other people and what other people have or what other people are doing or what other people have accomplished in comparison to ourselves, and thinking that they had it figured out or that they knew exactly what they were supposed to do, or whatever. And it's like, a lot of times what you'll find with people that are successful is that they kind of fell into it, that they were, again, just working on themselves, or that they were, even a lot of times it's like, well, I lost a job, I thought it was the end of the world, and so I did such and such, met somebody, and now I invented this thing. It's like, the world is a funny place. Life is a funny thing. And again, I think if you can find that compassion for yourself tomorrow, that compassion for who you can be in the future, and separate it from who you are now and how you might feel about yourself now, even in the context of approaching yourself as you would a friend, taking the actions as if you're taking actions for a friend, and be your own best friend for your future self. I think that has a lot of resonance as well, at least for me. And I was saying this to Adelaide too on the way we were walking. A lot of times when we're talking, it's an opportunity for me to give myself advice, so to speak, in that I'm talking with you guys, but a lot of times the things that I'm saying for me, and it's things that I need to hear, that I want advice on, that are things that I would, tell a friend, and I'm not even taking my own advice, And like I say, it gives me the opportunity to hear those thoughts and be like, well, shit, I'm telling my friends to do these things, or, have the compassion or whatever. And it's like, what have I been doing? What have I been thinking? What have I been acting on or not acting on? Even this very conversation, acting in a way that is going towards the best benefit of yourself tomorrow and next week. I mean, I have to think about this too. I'm, in the same boat as you guys, and it's that's why I always use the examples of the dishes and the laundry and all that's all my bullshit, That's why it comes to mind so easily, because it's all the bullshit I'm feeding myself that I'm not attending to, that is weighing on my mind, or the compassion, or the, even the whys. It's things that I'm trying to reflect on and that I'm trying to establish. And it's not to say I'm always doing it. But if you can do it, if you can find some kernel of truth in any of that and apply it, and same with me, we'll ultimately be better off, right? It's like it, but sometimes it's just difficult to do. And the reason I'm saying all this is because in looking at yourself as being multiple beings, and looking at yourself as being a different person tomorrow, or somebody that you're caring about as if they were your friend. And, 'cause sometimes we also take actions for friends that are things that we're not even doing for ourselves, but because it's a friend, we're like, yeah, I'll help you out. Like, even it's like, and maybe this isn't the best example, but it's like you're at a friend's house and they're doing dishes and you're like, oh, like, let me help you with that. Yet you have a whole pile of dishes at home that you refuse to do. And, again, it's about if you can shift your perception to the actions that you're taking to again, maybe that you're doing them for a friend, even though they're things that you're doing for yourself. Maybe that'll give you the shift in perception to just get started. And you'll know that you'll find your why as you go along. You'll find your reasons, and they'll change too. They may not be perfect. They may not be the best why right now. And then you refine, and you're refining, and you're refining. And hopefully you continue refining. And again, you fall off, and then hopefully you pick yourself back up.
Yeah, but back to the self-critiquing thing, and I do that a lot, and I'm really, really, really hard on myself. And part of it is just based on how you grew up and how you were parented, I think, and then also from just society and all the expectations that they put on us. But recently, what's been helping me focus in a lot, and just grow a lot, and kind of I'm in a rebirthing process right now, I feel and I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to explain it. I was telling Alex earlier, Chris, when you were going through your rebirthing and you're during quarantine, I remember you being man, all these things are happening and I just can't explain it, but I just feel great, and I'm just you can't find the words to explain the process. But anyways, what I've been doing for the self-critiquing thing, because I think that's the biggest thing that I struggle with, is when you have that negative self-talk, you're not worthy, or you're not that good at this, or for me it was you're not a yoga instructor, you're not that good, you don't know how to teach. I would say that to myself constantly, before classes, after classes. And recently I've just been in the moment, right at the moment that I think that, I have to be aware of it and be hey, no, and I flip it immediately at that moment. You're not a good teacher. I flip it and I'm yes, you are, because people are coming to your classes. You have to almost have a conversation with yourself and be the judge of your own thoughts, and flip it in that instant moment. Because once you do it in that instant moment, I feel that's what matters. You can think all these things and then not do it in that moment that you're having that negative self-talk, go down a hole, get out of that hole, and then write affirmations and stuff, which is great, and journal and stuff, which is great. But if you don't do it right away when you think it, I think I mean, it's like you can still have a great journey and stuff, but I think for me, like I have to like do that and kind of like slapping myself in the face, like, girl, what you doing? Like, don't say that about yourself. Like, that's not true. Because most of the time, like the things that you tell yourself are not true. And like, that's a big realization for me because I used to think like all these negative things that I would say about myself were true. And like that I knew that were true, but everyone else like just was like not like just like faking it or something around me, you know. So just remembering that like that those thoughts are not true, and like
Yeah, you're a great yoga teacher, by the way.
oh thank you, thank you. But yeah, so I think that's
Yeah, I get that. I feel like it's also imposter syndrome. Like,
yes, I have that hardcore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I got a few things to say. So I feel like I like to call that period of time the purpose of discovering your purpose. So that was me for like a decade. It's definitely part of the process. So don't think like, oh, just because I don't know my why, that that is part of the process. The part of the process of discovering your why is not knowing your why. And I found that, and they say when your why is strong enough, the how becomes irrelevant. So a lot of us, we try to figure out, like we might think of something, we're like, oh, well, how is that going to be a possibility? It might seem too grand. But if you only focus on the here and now and on that why, like reinforcing that why, the process or the steps will start to appear before you day by day or week by week. And I found that the greatest way to uncover that why is to it's a process to discover self-love and connection back with God or the universe, right? And to do that, you have to find out what is I brought this up with the unconditional love like a couple of weeks ago. It's like, what is preventing you from simply receiving that? That's really where the work is. That's really where the inner work lies. What is preventing you from really loving yourself fully, authentically, wholly, and what is preventing you from connecting back with God, back with the universe? And so if you're in that season of the purpose of discovering your purpose, I challenge you guys to go back to that, the process of self-love and divine love, and that why will eventually present itself to you. Yeah.
Can you say more on that, on the process of self-love and divine love? Like, what do you mean by that? What's the process?
So that's really the inner work. There's a lot of different ways you can do about it. Obviously, meditation is one of those ways, but it's the process of kind of really understanding what holds you back, and instead of looking at it as something you need to fix, you look at it as something that needs to be accepted. And when this thing gets fully accepted, you'd be surprised how quickly it fixes itself. Because your greatest curse will one day become your greatest blessing. That's how it always is. That's like a law of the universe. Whatever was holding, like one of my biggest problems was that I was really taking on a lot of people's energy because I'm an empath, and that was the biggest curse for the longest time. But when I really accepted that and understood like, oh, what that means for my life and what that means for my future, then that curse suddenly became a blessing. And now I can share that with others. And it's really the greatest thing that I feel like I could have ever received, So that's just one example, but it's the process of bringing up that which kind of curses you and really looking at it, understanding it, where it comes from, understanding the lessons. There's a bunch of things about it. We could talk about it sometime. I'm actually learning this thing called I think it's called the mirroring exercise, and it's been pretty beneficial for me. I've only done it a couple times, but it's been really great. It's really a process of like, and when I was doing it for myself, it's like some stuff came up that I didn't even know was there. And it's like, oh, wow. It's like, yeah, it's like, of course I got to let that go. It's like, I can't believe I've been holding that back and I didn't even know it was there.
What's the mirroring process?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know it exactly.
Well, what are you doing with it?
Well, I'm actually doing it with someone, so they're teaching me, and I've only done it one time with them, but it's really like the inner work. It's the inner work, like in a very nice, neat, like step-by-step thing. It's like, okay, close your eyes, you know, something, what comes up for you. It's like, okay, what is that thing? Where does that thing come from? And it's like look at yourself with compassion with that thing. And it's like, what do you need at this time? And then it's like a process of giving yourself that which you need, like all internally. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I actually have gone through a very similar process, probably within the last week and a half or 2 weeks, maybe even more. But I was going through a state where I just like wake up and like I am like, what do I do today? I have like no inspiration, no desire. I'm just like, just go and force myself to do the routine, but not appreciating it. So what I first did was I took myself out of that place, that location, when there was a suppressive person that was making me kind of, that state just keep kind of building. So I took myself out of that. And then now it's been a process of, okay, let me just feel my energy, just kind of just become aware of my body, aware of my own presence, and just accept this is where I'm at. And just like stop fighting it. If you're unhappy, you feel it and just kind of accept where you're at. That's what it started off. And that helped me kind of just, okay, well, kind of sort through the psychological things that were kind of bogging me down. And then after I kind of let those things go and acknowledge that they are there, I was able to kind of have a more optimistic look. And so that my next step was, okay, let me just try to be optimistic. I need to change my state, go for a walk, get those happy chemicals going off of, and then that builds. And then you can actually start then thinking, okay, what is it that I desire? What is it that inspires me? Who am I to like kind of feel yourself, okay, well, I have interest in this, this, and this. I haven't even remembered that about myself in like 5-10 years, you know? And then so you pursue that, discover more of, do you still like it? If you don't, and then that's, I don't know, maybe that's how I kind of got out of my little funk. Maybe there's a few tidbits in there that'll help you.
I totally resonate with you, Brianna. Like, I feel like it comes down to the simple things, like literally just every day making yourself go outside, take a walk, be in the sun, cooking good food for your body, because that's what's fueling everything that's going on. Without it, like you know, that controls you essentially, because that's what's you. So just like making food out of love instead of like, you know, maybe like going through a drive-through and just like stuffing it in your mouth and just moving on. Yeah, one murder here, yeah. And yeah, and even if it's like, you know, maybe not the greatest food, like me and Claire talked about this a couple days ago, but like we used to just have random veggies in the refrigerator and we would just throw it into a bowl, and like it might have not been the greatest things, but like we were like, damn, like we made this into a meal somehow, like putting two different things that like we would never put together, but we did, and now we're eating it. And so just being like grateful for that. Like I like to, me and like Claire introduced this to me, like I take gratitude, but I give gratitude to my food, even if you don't have anything to be grateful for, like it doesn't come to your mind, just be like, I'm grateful for the fact that someone grew this bell pepper and it's here on my plate or whatever, you know. So it's just breaking it down to the simple things, and then like Brianna said, more things will start coming, like more passions, and the bigger things will start coming out once you focus on just the simple basic things.
That's all beautifully said. all three of y'all. You know, those are all wonderful things to reflect on and think on.
Got
And-
one more.
Yeah, please.
Wanted to end with this quote. It kind of piggybacks off of what a lot of people are saying. So this is from Abraham Lincoln, and he says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." So it kind of goes back to, like, majority of the time you're actually not even chopping the tree down. You're working on yourself. You're sharpening your axe, right? Sharpening your mind, your heart, your gut, your soul, your intuition. You're sharpening your tools. Yeah.
And that comes trusting the process too. Trusting that you're going to get that results, even if you don't necessarily know the results, you know that you're going to be in the best possible position to achieve it when the time is right. And, coming back to what you said about the gratitude, it's something that I neglect to do on a daily basis, but I have found that when you can find a bit of gratitude every day, I like Chris's, what Chris always says, start your day, like you can control how you start your day and how you end your day. And, if you can meditate in those times, great. But I think at the very least, you can find something to be grateful for when you wake up and when you go to bed. It takes no more than a minute. And even if it's something like, I'm grateful for toilet paper, again, you're establishing the mindset of gratefulness versus what is today going to bring? What are the problems? What do I have to do? Cultivating that gratefulness can really be a game changer. Right? And again, I think it's just because it's something so simple. And back to the simple things seems to be the theme today. Those are the things that can really seem like a why bother. And it's because we tend to overlook, or it's not, I shouldn't say it's that we overlook, it's that we have a difficult time seeing the bigger picture of what it all amounts to. And it seems so trivial to say, well, I'm grateful for my food right now. And, it took 10 seconds to say those words or to think those thoughts as a food per se is presented before you. But you have to think longer term. And that's why I say thinking about yourself from the perspective of this individual, these 365 individuals that are existing in a year, that doing that 365 times versus not doing it, it makes a big difference. Taking that small action, the small daily actions really resonates in your inner being in a greater way at the end of the year or at the end of whatever time period per se. And I would say, we've mentioned a lot of things, and, I understand that we don't always know where we're going, but have a little bit of faith that even if you don't ultimately know your why, what you want, you want to feel better. That you wouldn't be coming here if you didn't think that there was something that you'd like to change within yourself. If there's something that you'd like to change within your day or within your process. And I would say at least have a little bit of faith and trust in the fact that you do want better, and know that it's not going to come in one big windfall all at once. And that I would come back to try and stick with 3 things for a week and see how you feel. See if it makes a difference or not. Slight difference. Don't expect huge. Try not to have any expectation. but try to notice how you're feeling today and implement those 3 things for the next week and see how you feel in a week. You know, if you're in a better mind state, if you're in a better acceptance of yourself, exactly how you are, and the acceptance that, you know, you can do better, or that you can do better than you did yesterday, only comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, not comparing to anybody else, and see how you feel. Trust that at the very least, you're probably going to feel better. Like you kind of know in your heart of hearts that, yeah, you know, I know I'd feel better if the table was clean. You know, I know I'd feel better if like, you know, I brush my teeth every day, right? It's those little maintenance things that, I'm not saying I don't brush my teeth every day. Okay? I'm just saying, like, you understand that it's small, it's trivial in a sense, even if it's not necessarily trivial because it's a health thing, but it's those little things add up. You know, it's those little tidbits that just make you feel different. And don't expect that you're going to feel happy or thrilled even in a week. But maybe you won't feel depressed. Maybe you won't feel bogged down. Maybe you'll just be neutral instead of self-loathing. You know, I'm not saying anyone here is that. I'm just saying, like, even me, like, I've expressed with a number of you guys, I have, you know, issues with self-love, and you know, it's a challenge for me too. And you know, maybe instead of like feeling that like ugliness towards myself, I feel neutral, or I feel more loving or more compassionate towards myself. And maybe that changes everything. Maybe it's so small, it seems so insignificant, but it could be the difference between a whole timeline of events.
I feel pretty neutral, but I want to get more towards the self-love. Like,
Sure.
you know, not just being neutral or loathing, but actually loving myself.
Yeah.
I know where you're at, Angel. I held those feelings and thoughts for a long time too. That came with it was. Are you studying a lot of Buddhist stuff?
I've been surrounding myself with a lot of Buddhist thought, but not directly.
So the thing about Buddhists is that if it's really odd because it's like their stuff is true, but if you attach to it, it'll make you feel that way actually.
Yeah.
So there's a balance to be had there. It just means that there's still a balance to be had. But I know exactly what you're going through. I've been there. I studied at a Buddhist monastery for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can help you out with that for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think you're talking about first that like the Buddhist way is the middle path, so to speak, and it's pretty neutral.
Well, it's
expectationless, like wanting nothing.
Right, that the dualism or non-dualism.
Non-dualism is the biggest thing in Buddhism, and that's true, and that's why I always see for me. And the thing is, if I go back to Buddhism, I feel like they've been talking about this the whole time, but the middle path for me has always been in between non-dualism and dualism. I'm like right in there. So even though non-dualism is ultimate truth, but you have to remember here and now, where are you?
Yeah.
Right now? You are a human on earth, a dualistic reality. So yeah, so you have to remember where you are at this point in time, and then find that balance there. Sorry, someone else. Yo, it's Chris Ang.
Hey, what's up, Ang?
What's up?
No, that's good. And like what the point Chris just made, the thought that brings to my mind, because I've been watching a lot of Avatar recently, is where he's teaching like Zuko how to lightning bend.
Yeah.
And so he talks about like separating the energy of like the yin and the yang and like existing in that in between and just directing that.
Yeah.
Because I guess yeah, go ahead.
Just to say, everybody should watch that show.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I mean, even like the path towards self-love, like Uncle Iroh tells Zuko like this great part where, because I mean, in the past, I wouldn't have said that I struggled with self-love because I was very like, I mean, prideful, I guess. I thought highly of myself, but um, I don't remember the exact line, but he talks about how like pride is not the opposite of shame. It is its source, right? And humility is the antidote to shame. And that's where I'm trying to get to. But I think at the same time, I kind of overcorrected and became kind of self-denigrating, right, in an attempt to be humble. And I don't know, Kendrick has actually helped a lot with like his concept of humility, right? You don't humility isn't belittling yourself. You still honor your gifts and your talents without I would say humility is being truthful.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. Yeah, and you know that in itself is part of the process. That was kind of like me. It's like I always swung from one side of the pendulum to the other. It's kind of like this extreme thing. But over time, you know, it starts to kind of correct itself till eventually, you know, you're a little closer to the center.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, just bring some compassion to yourself. Like you're doing it. You know, it's just that's part of the process.
Yeah, and you know, again, back to part of the process is that you're going to have good days and bad. And just because you have an off day or an off week, it doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path. As a matter of fact, it may be an indicator that you're on the right path. Because sometimes things get thrown in your path when you're going the right way. I hate to say it's a test of faith. In a certain regard, it is, even if it's a test of faith towards yourself or with yourself as to what choice are you going to make. Are you going to choose to let it knock you down for the day or the week or the month or the year? Or are you going to choose to let it knock you down for that moment and accept it as just a stone, another stepping stone on the way of your path? And I think that's probably the most difficult thing, because you know, you feel like a lot of times you feel like you're getting on a roll and you're getting good and you're on your way, and it's typically not a positive windfall that comes when you're going. It's usually something, you know, negative comes up, something unexpected. And again, it's how you choose to respond. Cultivating your choice in your everyday actions, in your breath, what you want on the daily. Yeah. You're on the right path, Angel. Mm-hmm. Honestly. All of us, we all are struggling, man.
And the fact that you're like here, like you chose to come to meditation group, like for me, like when I first started meeting with like Alex and stuff, like I wouldn't come like every week. I would come like once every 2 months, 3 months. But like every time that I went, I felt so good and like refreshed, and I was like, oh, and you know, then it started becoming more, and then now like, you know, I'm pretty much here like every week, and like I remember like it was recent that like I was going like every like 2 weeks or something like that. It wasn't that as often, but like like I remember there was this one session that I went and I was like, wow, like, man, I feel so good. And it extended into like my whole entire rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like I felt connected, I felt aware. I was just like present, you know, just because, and I was like, what is it? Like, why do I feel this way? And it was because I had come to meditation group and I had shared my thoughts and talked it out, and like, just even if I didn't say anything that session, like I was listening and just being in the presence of like everyone, even though it was Zoom, it made me feel so good. And I was like, cool. I was like, let me try this again. And so I did it the next week and I was like, wow, I feel so good again. And so now I'm like, anytime that I don't do meditation group, I'm always like, damn, like, like, you know, like this week won't be as connected, but it's okay. Like I'll find it in different ways, you know. But yeah, like you're here and like you do yoga and you're over there doing neck rolls. Like you're doing it. You're doing it. You're like, yeah, it's just like not instant gratification. And I don't think that it will ever be. It's like a everyday discipline type of thing.
You know, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's that instant gratification.
Yeah.
That's what we're all after,
Mhm.
right? And it just work sometimes, unfortunately. Sometimes it's just maintenance.
Mhm.
It's not glamorous. It's not, it just is. So, yeah. I think that wraps it up for tonight.
Yeah, that was really good. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Really appreciate all you coming, talking, and sharing. You know, I just have to say it always helps me a lot to connect with you guys and to share. And so I'm really grateful to have all of you to be able to do that with. You know, it's not always you know, sunny days, but it's great to be able to talk with y'all.
I feel the same. I appreciate your minds and your thoughts, the way you express yourself, and I learned a lot from you guys, so appreciate this group.
So I'll send y'all a playlist. If y'all would like to use it, I'll send it on the group chat. And yeah, namaste.
Namaste.
Bye, y'all. Namaste.
Bye, everybody.
Night.